Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, June 14th, about 5:30 a.m. Central Time. I have Matt Bennett joining me here this morning. Joe is out for the day. We're going to start off with the most recent drought monitor that was released yesterday. We saw rainfall across the Corn Belt last week, and because of this, drought conditions improved in western Michigan, northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, portions of central and northeastern Iowa, and southern Missouri. We did have some moisture deficits that caused conditions to worsen in northeastern Missouri and northwestern and east central Illinois. Heavy rainfall across the southern portion of the High Plains last week led to improved conditions across Kansas. Drought conditions also improved slightly in northern Oklahoma. When we look at the percentage of U.S. areas experiencing drought, corn country only 2%, soybeans 1%, winter wheat 16%, spring wheat 3%, and cattle country 8%. So we've obviously seen drought conditions improve significantly this spring. What are your thoughts on the current crop conditions?
Crop conditions, as far as USDA concerned, obviously look like it's a massive crop. I don't know. You've heard me talk about this a little bit with Joe. This is great that we don't have the drought monitor looking the way that it did before. A really bad time for most row crop farmers to wipe out a drought is during the middle of spring planting, though, because it causes some issues agronomically. I mean, you've got shallow roots, you've got problems with nitrogen loss. It's just that's the long and short of it. I do think the crop looks good from the road. And I think the crop's got potential. I don't want to sit here and act like this is going to be a terrible crop. I just don't think you're looking at a 180 type crop with the kind of issues we've had. I think a lot of your compaction issues, nitrogen loss, and ponds, for instance, a lot of these things are going to be seen later in the year rather than earlier. So for the time being, I think it's still a pretty darn good crop as far as potential goes. And we've got subsoil moisture, so it should give us a really good opportunity to be able to withstand some dryness. But the problem I see coming forward would be the heat, because I do think that anytime you have a stressful start to the crop, you need a lot of follow-up rain, and you don't want a whole lot of heat.
Right. So speaking of the heat, a high pressure ridge will bring warmer weather to the Corn Belt in the coming days. Much of the region may experience above normal temperatures, according to the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day government forecasts. Along with the increased heat, many areas will also see higher humidity levels. The 7 day forecast is calling for western and northwestern areas of the Corn Belt to receive abundant rainfall. Eastern areas of the region, however, will remain drier by comparison. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this forecast and what it does look like for crops going forward?
Yeah, I think that the folks that have had, for instance, a lot of stress in the spring, we're seeing a lot of 90s, which is what we've got in our part of the world. It's really not what you want to see if you've had a ton of stress. Now, if you've got good soil and you've got a good root structure under it, which I'm afraid a lot of folks don't. I mean, it's hard to get a good root structure when you've got a wet spring, but that heat's not going to absolutely kill you. The thing that you would like to see if you're trying to raise a big crop would be abundant rainfall along with a lot of heat. You're going to see that in parts of the Corn Belt. Some of those areas probably don't necessarily want to see as much as what they're going to get. But let's be real clear. This is the time of year where we've switched from rain is evil to rain is good. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't want it when you're trying to plant. You don't want it when you're trying to bale hay. And a lot of folks have, fortunately, in our part of the world, they've been able to skate by here. A ton of hay has been baled here over the last 10 days. The weather's been perfect for it, but now we're going to go from 80s and low humidity, to mid 90s. So it's going to change significantly. So those that aren't getting the rain, they're going to see stress. There's no doubt about it. Doesn't mean they're just going to kill their crop. They're going to see a lot of stress, a lot of corn roll and stuff like that. It's just going to be important that they get some rain on the backside of all this heat.
So, if this heat does stick around for, say, an extended period of time, will we soon be talking about increased drought conditions and have that be impacting the market?
For sure. Topsoil conditions, of course, are going to deteriorate rapidly. The thing is, once you've got this crop growing, your needs per day are huge as far as getting some sort of precipitation. If you're looking at 90s for temperatures, And so you're going to deplete your soil moisture very quickly. So it'll be very interesting to see just how long it sticks around. If it sticks around 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's certainly going to catch the market's attention. It will be seen in crop conditions because, quite frankly, this crop won't look very good for those folks driving around looking at it.
So the forecast for Brazil's second corn crop has increased. On Thursday, CONAB increased its outlook for the crop to 88.1 million metric tons, up 2.3% from last month's estimate. Last season, the crop reached 102.4 million metric tons. Brazil's total corn production is now projected to reach 114.1 million metric tons, almost 14% less than last season. CONAB also trimmed its outlook for Brazil's soybean crop due to excessive rainfall in southern Brazil that caused historical flooding. The agency is forecasting the crop at 146.4 million metric tons, down significantly from 154.6 million metric tons last season. What are your thoughts on these numbers and their impact on the market?
I don't know that they're going to impact the market greatly. CONAB usually runs lower than the USDA. It's just kind of how it works. I think it's interesting to see how much difference there is between CONAB and the USDA, though. I mean, you're pushing 10 million tons, half of the last several months. Right now, it's a little bit less on both corn and beans, but regardless, CONAB's looking at that crop a lot different than what USDA is, even in the case where they raised corn, which I was a little surprised because they have certainly had a lot of heat and a lot of dryness in the main areas that they're producing the safrinha crop. I was under the impression they may even trim that a little bit. But as we saw last year, you can see a lot of hot and dry conditions. If you get a good, well-timed rain event or two, you can still raise one heck of a good corn crop. And that appears to be what's going on down there. But yeah, I think the getting the USDA and CONAB to come together later on in the year is going to be interesting on who's more right about these two crops, because quite frankly, you're talking several bushels here.
Right, a huge difference. U.S. corn export sales declined slightly last week, but remained strong. Net corn sales were reported at 42 million bushels, down 11% from the previous week, but up 16% from the prior 4-week average. Japan was the largest corn buyer for the week. Net soybean sales were reported at 14 million bushels, up 99% from the previous week and up 42% from the prior 4-week average. China was the largest buyer for the week, and then net wheat sales of 8 million bushels fell below pre-report expectations for the first week of the 24-25 marketing year. Mexico was the largest wheat buyer for the week. What are your thoughts on last week's export sales?
We're still selling some soybeans, which is nice to see. I mean, corn sales continue to trudge right along. Bottom line is some of these export sales have been, I would say, supportive. I don't know that you would necessarily call them bullish, but I definitely would say that they're supportive, and it definitely lends credence to what the USDA was trying to say in May whenever they raised corn exports 50 million bushels. I think that you're going to be able to hit that export goal fairly handily. It'll be interesting to kind of see, what that final Brazil crop looks like. But even in the face of it being maybe a little bit bigger, as we just talked about, than what we thought maybe even a month ago, according to CONAB, still looks like we're going to be able to get export sales, which should transition into commitments. So pretty darn excited about the fact that at this point in the marketing year, we're still selling beans, though. That's probably even bigger story yet.
So speaking of beans, we did have another flash sale of soybeans on Thursday. U.S. exporters sold 4 million bushels of soybeans to unknown destinations for delivery during the current marketing year. This is the fourth flash sale of soybeans in the last 5 trading sessions, totaling 16 million bushels. Of course, the recent flash sales we've seen, they have went to China. Is this a chance? Is there a chance that this sale is also going to China? And do you feel like these flash sales that we've seen, are they a sign of things to come?
Yeah, I mean, certainly is an improvement. You know what I'd like to see China do is step in and buy some new crop beans. I mean, they haven't done anything there. And that's probably the most concerning part of this whole picture, is that whenever you look at that new crop balance sheet, the USDA has a big increase as far as U.S. corn or soybean exports go. How can you do that without China? I mean, that's just we're going to have to see something pretty significant happen here soon, given the fact that we're already in the middle of the month of June and we still haven't seen China step in and buy any. Now, they bought some old crop beans. We'll take it, unknown. Probably China. I mean, I don't know. Typically, that's what we've found in the past, but those guys buying old crop beans is definitely a good sign. And I think that your question is probably going in the right direction. Maybe it means that they're going to finally step in and buy some new crop beans because we certainly need to see that.
Right, that would be great to see. The oil and ethanol industries have come together to combat the transition to electric vehicles. Trade groups and companies from both industries filed petitions on Thursday against the Biden administration's pollution limits. They argue that the limits will unfairly push automakers to sell EVs while hindering the sale of gas and diesel vehicles. The EPA's restrictions would limit carbon dioxide emissions to the point that auto dealers would essentially just be forced to increase EV sales. Experts say the requirements ignore the ability of ethanol to reduce vehicle emissions. Those in favor of the standards believe they are comparable to the introduction of catalytic converters back in the 1970s. What are your thoughts on this administration's their effort to force EVs on Americans?
Yeah, I don't know how much detail I want to go into here. I think that the market should be able to kind of sort this out. Now, the thing about it is that we know that ethanol reduces emissions as far as what that vehicle is burning. I think the question has always been, what about what it takes to produce the ethanol? I think that's what a lot of people try to dissect. Uh, Personally, I don't think that the country is prepared to be able to go to a massive increase in electric vehicles. I don't think we've got the grid to support it, first of all. Second of all, I'm not so sure that EVs are as environmentally friendly as what we've been led to believe whenever you look at the lithium batteries, what it takes to mine those, and then what do you do with them once you're done with them? So personally, of course, I would like to see us continue down the ethanol path. I'm not someone who wants to see pollution happen just because I want to make money. I just don't think that it's conceivable to be able to go down that road just yet to that degree until you find a way to more efficiently not only make these vehicles, but be able to run them. I mean, you're sitting there pulling up to a diesel powered generator to get your car, charged up. I mean, that's just, in my opinion, that's asinine to sit here and not acknowledge that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. All I talked about all winter is that if we don't have renewables continue to gobble up U.S. demand as far as corn and soybeans go, we're going to be in big trouble due to what kind of competition we see out of South America. And I still feel that way, Kenzie. I think that it's going to be very important as we transition into, a new administration, whether it's the same outfit we're working with now or if it's a new one, EVs, and then this renewable situation. It's going to be extremely important to the U.S. farmer.
So we saw cattle futures. They were mixed on Thursday. Feeders were down 17 cents to 35 cents higher. Live cattle were green across the board, ranging from 22 cents higher to a buck 17 higher. What's your take on this cattle market right now?
I think supported, but not something that you're going to see a massive rally right now. It just seems like kind of a consolidation, boring type trade. To me, if you can kind of stack some cattle on feed reports together, which I expect, we've talked about that for a long time, you'll probably stay supported. Now, will you be wildly bullish? Because I think everyone wants to get wildly bullish due to the fundamentals. The fundamentals are bullish. Hey, guess what? Everyone in the market knows the fundamentals are bullish. So if I'm a cattle producer and I'm back in the mid 180s, my month that I'm going to be getting terminal, good Lord, at least lock something in there, because I don't know how many times we've got to see this thing drop $10 to $25 in rapid fashion, before we step in and at least cover our rear end. So, I'd like to say that we're going to make new all-time highs later this year because of low cattle on feed numbers. I'm not convinced it's going to happen at this point. I think that we'll stay supported for a while, though.
Yeah, with the level of volatility, you just never know.
Absolutely.
All right, Matt, thank you for joining me here this morning. Everyone, have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday.